A beloved grandmother killed by a driver going 50 miles an hour over the posted speed. Why a Minnesota family calls what happened to the man responsible a stark reminder of Hennepin County's so-called justice system. Matt Whalen is my guest. Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Liz.
Tragically, it was your grandmother who died more than 2 years ago now in a crash in Plymouth. Sandy Wetterland, she was 75 years old, and Christopher Keys hit her vehicle going twice the posted speed limit, at least 90 miles an hour, so fast that the impact sent your grandma's car down an embankment and into a townhouse. We also have pictures of the damage to Keys' vehicle as well, which again, I think just by looking at these pictures, you can see how fast he must have been traveling at the time that this all happened. Obviously, you hear this horrible news about your dear grandma, Sandy. You then find out this guy, Christopher Keys, shouldn't have been driving at all.
That's right, Liz. And thank you again for the opportunity here. That day, she was over at my in-laws' house with my family, my wife, and had just had lunch with everybody over there. And she was actually bringing donuts back to her husband, which they lived in a community right next, retirement community, and right next door was the area where her husband was staying because of his on-site dementia. So she was bringing some donuts back to him right after lunch, and unfortunately didn't make it back to see her husband. It was a beautiful day in May, first day of spring of 2022, and I was at work, and I got the phone call from my father-in-law about Sandy, and unfortunately she didn't make it, and it was just a terrible scene. It wasn't right. Shouldn't have happened, should have never happened. And like you stated, he did not have a valid Minnesota driver's license. We later did find out that he had a license, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. That's kind of up in the air. We're not very positive if he had a Wisconsin license or not. But there was a loophole there for him to have this license, but not really, I guess. And they never pursued charges against that part on him. So unfortunately, it had happened, and we had to start figuring out the process of how to move forward and figure out things and work as a family together to make things work.
He wasn't supposed to be driving, but we should really mention why Christopher Keys had at least 7 speeding convictions just in the couple of years prior to this. And I want to talk about the latest conviction. It was an incident that happened on June 3rd of 2022. So this is after, where he drove 88 miles an hour in a 60 mile an hour zone. This is less than 1 month after he killed your grandma.
That is correct. Yep. The leading up to the incident where grandma lost her life there, he had probably about 7 or 8 speeding convictions, and then also some no insurance related convictions. And then after the fact, there was actually about, I think, 3 times where he was pulled over, and one right a month after, 88 and a 60 on 394. And then he had been stopped 2 for driving after revocation also. So he didn't stop. It just blows the minds away of us being a family, not understanding, all right, you already killed somebody, you need to stop driving, and this has been a major push for me and to further increase the law or increase the punishments of these issues. And I've been pursuing that ever since his conviction.
Ultimately, Keys is charged with criminal vehicular homicide by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. Incredibly, his Minnesota license was then reinstated just months after that charge. At the time, what were you hoping to see happen here to him? And then explain that, what the reality of what actually did happen, Matt.
Yeah, that's correct. So before the incident with Grandma happened, his license was revoked in the state of Minnesota. And at some point, your license might have been revoked for 6 months, 8 months, 1 year. I'm not sure. Haven't looked into the details of that exactly, but at some point your license does get reinstated by the state. He was charged with criminal vehicular homicide by the state of Minnesota. And within the time before he was sentenced for it, they reinstated his license. So in, I think, maybe June or July, he was charged with criminal vehicular homicide, and he was reinstated probably in that September area of 2022, I believe. So witnessing this too, due to the fact that he lives a block away from our family, watching him drive by free and with no, I guess, no accountability to make sure that he's not in a vehicle. For the rest of us in Minnesota, I don't understand the laws and why we haven't figured that out yet. Why does it take a death to make somebody stand up to say, hey, we need to make a difference here and make a change in our laws?
And part of that includes this 1 year sentence to the workhouse, I understand, that ultimately he receives. He ends up serving about 8 months of that. What was your sense from the Hennepin County Attorney's Office at the time? Just to clarify, Mary Moriarty is serving as Hennepin County Attorney at this time. It's her office representing what one would think would be your interest, in this case, the state's interest in public safety in general. Did you get the sense her office cared enough to take this to trial? And just to remind our viewers, she was dead set just recently on taking a Minnesota State Trooper to trial after charging him with murder.
It's very, very, very crazy to think about it that way, that she was dead set to bring a state trooper to trial and actually take funding to bring a state trooper to trial and then drop all those charges against the state trooper. I don't know why she didn't reach out and get some more funding to take Christopher Keys to trial. Where's the justice there? I don't think from the start that there was a positive feeling coming out of this case for us as a family. I always felt like there was a excuse train coming to town on why they couldn't bring it to trial, why they couldn't press further or push for further charges against him. It just felt like from day one, it was, all right, we got him on criminal vehicular homicide, but that word came up all the time, but it started off at 10 years. The first visit with Hennepin County Attorney's Office, they assigned a victim advocate to our case. And the victim advocate's role is to work between you and the prosecuting attorneys when you're a victim of a crime of this issue. That victim advocate, we expressed major concerns of his driving. Even after the death of our grandma, he continues to drive, continued to get pulled over, but no repercussions and no accountability after the fact. And that victim advocate kind of laughed it off along with the prosecutors, and said, you wouldn't be surprised of how many people drive without a license. You would be surprised of how many people drive after revocation. I get it, but when you're charging somebody with criminal vehicular homicide, there needs to be a stop to them driving. That is a murder weapon that that individual used to kill somebody. And a person's life, you know, and like you stated, 8 months in the workhouse. Well, 1 year he got convicted with, and he got 8 months and $1,000 fine in the workhouse. And you know, there's people that take money from people, and money is replaceable. You know, millions of dollars, you know, whatever, a Ponzi scheme, and they end up 20 years in prison. But this person took somebody's life, and they get 8 months in the workhouse. And even when he's in the workhouse, Liz, it blew my mind that there wasn't repercussions from this. He tested positive for drugs, coming back one day from being furloughed to go find a job. He didn't have a job too. So, you know, from the start of the case to the end of it, even after the end of it, no accountability, to be aggressive, to hold this person accountable from Hennepin County Attorney's Office, 100%. You know, we express so many concerns, you know, from every direction we could about this individual, and it wasn't because of just us expressing our concerns. It's because we're expressing them because everybody else around us, you know, knew about this, and we're watching the same thing unfold in front of us. And it was just so concerning that the county attorney's office would continue to let this individual live under freedoms that, you know, shouldn't have been put in place for him.
It must seem to you that you can get away with murder in Hennepin County.
That's the state trooper Dan Dixon that did the accident recreation. Phenomenal dude, great guy. Sorry. His comments about Hennepin County and the way the law is written is the ongoing joke in the state trooper's office was you can kill somebody with a car and get away with it, basically. And, you know, Dan did a phenomenal job on the recreation and presenting the evidence, and never got the opportunity to put that in front of a jury. And several witnesses also were there seeing him driving over 100 miles per hour. They never got to be in front of the jury to tell their side of the story, to really convict him. And the whole thing in court, it just felt like it was going to be a plea deal from the beginning, and there were no extra push to get it to a jury trial. It just never went there, and it should have. The defense attorney during the or when he was getting sentenced, the defense attorney made some remarks that, oh yeah, I could get this thrown out in a jury trial. There would have been no way. There was so much overwhelming evidence that just pointed the picture, you know, painted the picture clearly that he was very guilty. And instead of owning that, he hid behind his attorney, and his attorney put in a good plea deal, I guess, that Hennepin County was willing to take. And we fought that till the end. Didn't agree with it. Got to give our side of the story to the judge. After the plea deal was already put together and everything, we got to give our 2 cents to the judge. But everything was already in place, and being victims of a crime, your voice, I felt like our voice wasn't heard, and they weren't aggressive enough to get it to where we wanted it as a family. And we all feel that it was injustice and we need justice here. And, the excuse train was heavy on that throttle to get right to a plea deal. And they let the defense basically hand them the plea deal that they were going to agree to one way or another.
I know you're working with a Republican state representative to make some changes to laws involving criminal vehicular homicide. What specifically, Matt, do you want to see change?
So the major changes, in particular with our case and what happened with Grandma and the language of the law around vehicular homicide, the biggest change for our case would be implementing something with language that states something about speed. If you're doing 30 miles per hour over the speed limit or 20 miles per hour, obviously everybody knows that everybody speeds, goes over the posted speed limit, obviously. And the major issue that the prosecutors were stating was basically that they weren't able to prosecute him because there was no gross negligence, because the law doesn't state speed has anything to do with him driving over 100 miles per hour. And that's I think that needs to be a big change in our state. Is speeding is a big issue. Talking with the state trooper's office, Dan Dixon, and learning from him along the way here, he brought that to my attention. I don't know how many times that the new 10 over is 100 miles per hour, and that needs to be. We need to make a change there. But with vehicular homicide, the language in the law needs to state something about speed related issues. When there is a death, it just needs to be changed. That's one of the issues. The second big issue that we came across or were looking into was when you are charged with criminal vehicular homicide, your license should be revoked from the date of the charge. And what we witnessed as a family was there was still a freedom for this individual to use the weapon in this case, and it was okay up until his sentencing. After his sentencing, the sentence is 10 years. Your license is revoked if you are guilty of criminal vehicular homicide. So once you're charged with criminal vehicular homicide, you should lose your privilege to drive. It is not a right to drive. It is a privilege for all of us to operate a vehicle here. So you should lose your rights. And and we already do that with DWI cases. The state revokes licenses for a month or 6 months if you're charged with a DWI. I don't know why we haven't, as a state, come up with, if you use your car as a weapon and you're charged with criminal vehicular homicide or criminal operation, you should lose your right. So that's a big change I want to see. Those are two of the big changes we'd love to see. And yes, Kristen Robbins from our district, we've been working with for the last year and a half, 2 years. She's done a great job. She's put together some language. It did not get passed this year through the session. We're hoping in the spring that it will be her first subject to push through and get done on the House floor. She did she was able to get a couple other, being she's a Republican, she was able to get a couple of Democrats to actually co-author some of this language change or co-author a bill come next session, which I think will be a great thing. Obviously, it's common sense law here we're talking about that, if you use your vehicle to kill somebody, you shouldn't be able to drive it. So I think either side of the aisle, they should all jump on board and get something done. And I look forward to it, and I'm very hopeful for that. And another issue that has been it's popped up since our case and other cases. People that drive without licenses, people that drive with revoked licenses and suspended licenses. We need to stiffen our laws around that stuff. If you're pulled over right now and you have a revoked license, the officers actually cannot detain you. They actually have to just make sure you get a ride somewhere else. Most of the time, they can't stick around for an hour to wait for your ride. They're going to release you because they got to move on. Something else is hotter. And we got to stiffen our laws about that and make sure that, we hold people accountable on that stuff. And you know what? If you drive around and you kill somebody with your car and you have no license, or if you even seriously injure somebody with your vehicle, you don't have your license, or you have a revoked license, the penalties should be way stiffer than 8 months in the workhouse.
Common sense is right. Absolutely, Matt. I wanted to point out too, the heartbreak doesn't end with your grandma. I understand it's your grandpa then who dies 2 months later, and this is all still so raw for your family, even though it was a couple years ago, because it's clearly easy to see the connection between their deaths and also how this just did not have to happen at all.
That's exactly right, Liz. Grandpa and grandma, they're fantastic people. Grandpa, yeah, did die 2 months after Sandy was killed, and just he couldn't live without her. Just a broken heart.
Oh, it's truly heartbreaking, and why I think you're incredible to continue this path forward for the rest of us. We'll of course continue to follow all of this at the Capitol. Thank you for your important work you're doing. Appreciate you taking a stand on this, Matt.
Thank you, Liz. I truly appreciate the opportunity to come on with you and do this today. Thank you very much.
That'll do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.